Chapter 9. Parenthood. On April 15th of my second year of law school, my oldest son Jimmy was born. He was, and is, one of the greatest joys of our lives. Before he was 1 year old, he would stand in his crib or playpen and holding onto the railing to support himself and shout, "Hooray!" It was one of his first words. I'd attend classes, come home, and study with Jim looking on or sleeping in the room in which I often studied. After dinner, I'd go to the Graymore Hotel on 21 Preble Street in Portland, where I worked as a host in the nightclub. Diana's father, Harry, owned the hotel, which had shows and striptease acts and generally packed him in. I'd arrive home after 1 or 2 in the morning and have to hang my clothes out the window because they reeked of smoke. I'd then study for a few hours and catch a few hours sleep before going to classes in the morning. While I was in my last year of law school, the school was absorbed into the University of Maine system and became the University of Maine School of Law. Today, it is considered one of the outstanding law schools in New England. I was approached by one of my law professors who advised me that someone in Boston was interested in talking with me about a position with the government. He gave me an address in Boston that I should go to at a certain time and date. I complied and when in Boston was ushered into a nondescript office located in the post office. The interview lasted for over an hour, and when it was over, I had to sign non-disclosure agreements. I was informed that when I graduated and passed the Maine bar exam, I would be contacted. Meanwhile, soon after the interview, I was invited to Washington, D.C. at government expense, where I underwent 3 days of interviews and extensive testing. I returned home and heard nothing more until I graduated and passed the Maine bar almost a year later. I'd set up a law office in the Graymore Hotel and was busy handling driving violation cases and drunk and disorderly cases. Most of my clients were employees and relatives of employees of my father-in-law Harry's hotel. I had many clients who couldn't afford to pay anything, and Diana and I were struggling to make a living. The reality of the situation was that I didn't have any professional connections and was clueless as to how to set up a law practice. The phone rang. It was Washington calling. They offered me a job with a GS7 rating at $6,700 a year. Jimmy was 3 years old and Diana was just pregnant with our second child. We couldn't wait to get out of Portland and have a steady, although modest, income. We moved to a small 2-floor apartment in Arlington, Virginia in a development called Fairlington on South Columbus Avenue. I started my career with the Central Intelligence Agency. Our second child, Rachel, was born in 1963 on May 30th in Washington, D.C. She was a beautiful child. My dad called her Dreamy Eyes. My work required that I do some traveling. It was interesting work, and I loved what I was doing. The world was our oyster. We had 2 wonderful children, I loved my job, and John Kennedy was in the White House and exuded hope and optimism in the free world. The country plunged from high hopes to deep despair and mourning when President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. We were all in a state of shock. Vice President Lyndon Johnson assumed the presidency, and it wasn't long before the nation was deeply embroiled in the Vietnam War. I had a career opportunity in California, and we moved to San Jose. Diana was pregnant with our third child at that time and couldn't travel, so I drove across the country in 5 days with Jimmy, who was just over 3 years old at the time. We were rear-ended at a stop sign by a car in Texas, but survived in good shape and were able to continue on to California. I rented an apartment in a 4-plex on Concord Avenue between Bascom and Moorpark Avenues in San Jose, and Diana flew out with Rachel a few days later to join me. I continued to work and travel for the government. Peter was born in San Jose to complete our family. He was a beautiful baby. We had to take him back to the hospital a day after he was born because he was quite jaundiced. They took a blood sample from his tiny heel. He recovered very quickly and grew into a happy, healthy child. Within a year after Peter's birth, I was offered a job in private industry with a small company in Los Angeles by the name of Astrophysics. I faced a dilemma. I was now a GS11, making about $11,000 a year, and I loved my job. But I saw an opportunity to better myself and my family and accepted the position for $17,000 a year. This was a substantial increase and eventually enabled me to purchase our first home. We rented a small but lovely home on Malcolm Avenue in Los Angeles. It had lemon trees growing in the backyard and a place for the kids to play. Jerry Kay, a longtime friend from Lewiston, Maine, moved into the LA area not far from us and bought a swing set for the kids. The set was set up in our backyard, and the kids loved to play on it. Within a year, we moved from Malcolm Avenue to our first owned home on Corinth Avenue in the Palms section of West LA, not far from Mar Vista and only a few miles from the Pacific Ocean and Santa Monica. It was a happy time in our lives. Our 3 children were happy and healthy and enjoyed school. They played with friends in the neighborhood. We became fast friends with the Coomer family, who lived 2 houses down from ours. I stayed with astrophysics for 2 years and supplemented my income by teaching procurement courses for UCLA at the North American Aviation Facility in Downey, California. But while I enjoyed my work at astrophysics, it was clear that the company was not going to grow and my professional opportunities would be limited. I applied to Litton Industries, a huge growing multinational firm heavy into defense products as well as commercial products. I was hired at slightly more pay than I was getting at astrophysics and embarked on an 8-year career with Litton. I first worked at Litton's Data Systems division in Van Nuys in the San Fernando Valley, negotiating major subcontracts on several large defense programs such as the TACFire program and the AWACS program. The former was a computerized tactical fire direction center, which the Marines procured to use for their artillery in the front lines. The AWACS program was, and still is, an airborne warning and control system. It has matured significantly since I worked on the program back in the mid-60s. I worked long hours and was under constant pressure to meet deadlines and finalize contractual negotiations. I awoke one morning in 1969 coughing up blood and eliminating it both orally and rectally. Diana rushed me to the emergency room of the Santa Monica Hospital, where I was placed into the emergency ward. I passed out. The doctors could not stop the bleeding and early the next morning operated on me to stop the bleeding. I had a severe case of a bleeding duodenal ulcer. I was in very serious condition, but after receiving 13 transfusions, I slowly recovered. The Litton medical plan paid for all my expenses and continued to pay my salary. I had a relapse when it was discovered I had received a bad transfusion and contracted hepatitis C. I fully recovered. Litton won the largest shipbuilding contract to be awarded at the time. It was for 30 Spruance-class DD-963s destroyers, which were to be state-of-the-art and propelled by gas turbine engines. I was promoted to Director of Major Ship Systems subcontracts and transferred to El Segundo. This was a suburb of Los Angeles and an easier commute for me than Van Nuys. My job was preparing and negotiating contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars with such giants of the industry as General Electric and Pratt Whitney. I had a staff of over 50 people and was now making over $25,000 a year and enjoying good health and my family.